Good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled that you were able to join us on such very short notice. Obviously, we were not expecting this today. I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are joining us today. First of all, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, Executive Director of the Cimarron Alliance Equality Center. To your left is Ryan Kiesel, Executive Director of the ACLU of Oklahoma. And to your right is Professor Joseph Ty, one of the principal attorneys on the Oklahoma marriage equality case. And I'm going to let each of them speak in a moment. But we'll begin by saying, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. A few months ago, when we celebrated the victory of the United States 10th Circuit Court of Appeal, determining that it was unconstitutional to have a ban on same-gender marriage in Oklahoma, we celebrated. We certainly were not expecting to do so again so quickly. In fact, we expected it would be at least next summer before we had good news. This morning, we learned that the United States Supreme Court has rejected the appeals and decided simply not to hear them. Therefore, they are letting the lower court ruling stand, and Professor Ty will speak about the intricacies of that and the process by which everyone is notified. But I can tell you that there are many Oklahomans today who are all ready to go to the courthouse, who are calling their ministers and their families and their friends, because for many of us, me included, I never expected to see in my lifetime a day when lesbians and gay men in this state were approaching equality at the pace in which we are, and I certainly didn't expect this kind of a milestone so quickly. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce a man who I have come not only to call a friend, but a much admired colleague. He and his team have done extraordinary work on behalf of not just the plaintiffs and not just on behalf of the LGBT community in Oklahoma, but for every Oklahoman who values equality, fairness, and justice. Professor Ty.
Thank you very much, Scott. Today is a day of celebration. Marriage equality has finally and officially come to Oklahoma. There are no longer second-class families and couples in Oklahoma. Same-sex couples and their children may now, from today henceforth, enjoy all the benefits, protections, and dignity that marriage confers. We are stronger as Oklahomans, and we are stronger as Americans for the outcome of our 10-year legal struggle today. When our clients filed their lawsuit in 2004, none of us could foresee that it would take 10 years, and none of us could foresee the happy day that finally is today. And we could not have done this without the help and support of friends and families of gays and lesbians throughout the state and throughout the country, like the Cimarron Alliance and like the ACLU. I regret that my co-counsel, Don Holliday and James Warner, the architects of the legal victory in the district court, could not be here for the press conference, but they too share in the joy that this day brings to all Oklahoma families.
If you would, Professor, speak a little bit about what happened from the time that the Supreme Court declared that they would not hear these cases.
Right. When the Supreme Court denied the appeal of the court clerk in Tulsa County challenging our victory in the 10th Circuit, the 10th Circuit then had to issue a mandate, which is a formal order entering in its decision. It's issued its legal mandate. That means that the 10th Circuit decision ruling that same-sex couples, like opposite-sex couples, enjoy a fundamental right to Oklahoma, that decision is now the law of the state of Oklahoma.
It's my understanding that there really is nothing left for the state to do. Is that correct?
There is not. If there is one more legal step that the state might be waiting for is the step of the district court to formally issue its injunction, and I understand that that's going to happen at any moment, perhaps even now as we speak. We've also been in communication with the district clerk in Tulsa County, and we understand that the district attorney, in Tulsa County is preparing the clerk's office to issue marriage licenses today to all committed, loving adult couples, regardless of their gender.
Thank you. Ryan.
This is Ryan Kiesel. I'm the executive director at the ACLU of Oklahoma. Today is truly a historic day. I'm just thrilled to share it with our friends and colleagues and fellow advocates and allies in the LGBT community. It is difficult to put in words what it means now that loving and committed couples are able to walk into a court clerk's office and get a license that just a day last week, Friday of last week, they were unable to get. An era of discrimination in the state of Oklahoma is now being relegated to the dustbins of our state's history, but the lessons that we have learned from that are still going to be relevant as we move forward. This is a huge step towards equality, but it's not the last step. And while we can celebrate today, we have to ensure that the folks that take advantage of their fundamental constitutionally protected right to marry aren't then discriminated against by employers or landlords. So we have a long ways to go in the state of Oklahoma, but at least for today, I think that we can celebrate an enormous historic victory.
We certainly can, and I'd like to underscore what Ryan just said. For so many people, this has been a long and arduous fight. We remember those today who are no longer with us, who planted the seeds for just such a day. But none of us can afford to be lulled into thinking that we have reached the finish line. It's not until every person in our state, and that means regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, race, religion, ethnicity, or culture, until we are all treated equally, afforded the same rights and responsibilities as everyone else, free of discrimination, that we will truly have equality in this state. Many people are certainly on their way now to their court clerks throughout the state of Oklahoma. By 9:30 this morning, we'd heard from dozens of couples who have been waiting for this very moment. And so to say that we are excited is an understatement. It was a very powerful statement by their silence by the Supreme Court. Someone posted something today online that I thought was very interesting. They said, well, it's still a victory nonetheless, as if it was somehow less so because the Supreme Court decided not to hear it. Quite the opposite. They simply saw no reason to further review what the lower courts throughout the United States have all seemed to be relevant to society today. And finally, I would offer this. For anyone who is dramatically concerned about the negative impact that this might have on marriage in general, I would encourage you to look back only a few years ago to 1967. People throughout Oklahoma and indeed much of the country believed that if we were to allow interracial marriage to become the law of the land, that society would crumble, that marriages as we know them would no longer be the same. Well, I'm happy to say that society did not stop at that point. In fact, we continued to progress in the most positive way possible. So this will not harm the foundation of society. This will not impact negatively anyone else's marriage. If we believe, as so many of us do in this state, that marriage is the cornerstone of our society, then we all became just a little bit stronger today.
Indeed, and if marriage is the cornerstone of our society, equality is the cornerstone of our Constitution. It was a great principle that was adopted into our Constitution shortly after the Civil War. And it's a principle that we are constantly understanding. It is one that has taken sometimes painful epochs in our history to fully understand. For example, the first Congress that legislated after the adoption of the 14th Amendment that guaranteed the right to equality was also the same Congress that legislated segregated schools in Washington, D.C. And it took our country 100 years, the Supreme Court 100 years, to recognize unanimously that separate is not equal. Important in practical reality.
Right.
Opposite-sex couples, when they drive down to Texas for the OU Texas game, they remain married. Same-sex couples who can now get married in Oklahoma, when they drive down to Texas for the OU Texas game, they are not married in Texas. And that matters to them, and it matters to their families.
Thank you. Any questions?
Ryan, the Oklahoma County, I still haven't seen anything new that says that they're going to issue marriage licenses today. From what I understand, do they now have to? Are we waiting for some kind of ruling from the AG? Can the AG make some kind of a petition to the 10th Circuit to say we need more time?
I think it would be my position that there is nothing prohibiting Oklahoma County from acting right now, and I think that there's some argument that they're required to act right now. As Professor Ty said, there may be an order from Judge Kern's office in the Northern District that would formally lift the injunction, but I think that that's really a formality at this point. I would consider marriage equality to be the law of the land in Oklahoma.
Question for Mr. Ty. Do your clients plan on getting married today?
As soon as I can make it to Tulsa.
What was their reaction when you talked to them?
They were thrilled that after 10 years of legal struggles, good times and bad, that they can finally get married. Obviously, this day was a day that they look forward to, but in some sense, could not imagine would finally arrive.
So they do plan on doing it today as soon as you drive up there?
Absolutely.
Scott, are
Yes.
we worried about any kind of a backlash to the gay and lesbian community from people who might react violently to this decision?
Thank you for that question, because it's one that we pay attention to. Anytime that we see a victory, anytime that we see a significant movement toward equality, we do get a backlash. We get threatening phone calls and letters and that kind of thing. I believe that we have progressed, though, because following the 10th Circuit's ruling, those kinds of calls were at a minimum. So we've seen great progress. I will say that it's something that we're paying close attention to here at the Equality Center today, this week, and we're urging people in our community just to be aware of their surroundings.
Would anyone care to speculate on how this may affect other appeals going on in other judicial districts?
There's a
Will the Supreme Court, and do you anticipate the Supreme Court may take the same stance?
one of the main indicators for when a case is worthy of Supreme Court review is when the lower courts are split. And the remarkable thing legally is that in the last year, we've just had decision after decision striking down these laws across the country. It's really the outliers that have gone the other way. So far, all of the federal circuit courts have been unanimous in recognizing that marriage equality is a fundamental right. Until we get a circuit court decision that goes the other way, the Supreme Court probably will stay out of it. There is currently an appeal in the Sixth Circuit and in the Fifth Circuit Courts of Appeals, as well as the Ninth Circuit. And so there is the potential for a split among the federal circuit courts. But I think the denial today sends a strong message from the Supreme Court that as long as the legal landscape is uniform below, then the court will stay out of it. And as far as Oklahoma is concerned, this is game, set, match.
Right.
This decision is now final. Our clients will be married. They will be as married as any other Oklahoman.
And if you game this out for the long term, even assuming that there were a circuit split at some point, I think that it would be highly unusual for the U.S. Supreme Court in some subsequent decision in a later term to come back and try to undermine what's happened today. Because what we've seen today is the long historic march towards the recognition of a right. And the courts are very cautious about recognizing new rights. But I think that they're even more cautious and loath to take rights away that have already been granted. And that's the kind of case that we would see if a subsequent Supreme Court were going to take this issue up. It wouldn't be a matter of recognizing and granting a right. It would be a matter of taking rights away from millions of Americans that have been recognized with today's denial of cert.
Right. And to be clear, same-sex marriage is not a new right, just as marriage between interracial couples was not a new right. It's just a recognition that this basic fundamental right, this human right, in addition to being a constitutional right, is a right that all of us enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hamilton, we spoke this morning, Heidi, with lawyers. You had mentioned that tag agencies were getting ready to file paperwork for name changes, driver's license, and I've talked to several couples who are married out of state. Is that happening now?
It is happening now. We've talked to several tag agencies, and all that's required to change your name on your driver's license is to have a copy of your marriage certificate. And you know, a lot of Oklahomans have gone other places to be married. But when they come back here, they haven't been able to change their driver's licenses as a straight couple might. And so that's just a seemingly very small thing. But in the scope of what it means to an individual, it's actually quite a big accomplishment, because now it means that that's one more right that we're not being denied.
They don't have to get remarried here. Under another 10th Circuit decision, in the Utah case, the 10th Circuit struck down the ban on recognizing valid out-of-state same-sex marriages, and that is also binding now in Oklahoma. In our case, to be clear, we won an injunction against the direct ban on same-sex couples marrying in the state. Out of the Utah decision, now we have binding 10th Circuit precedent that also bars a state from refusing to recognize out-of-state same-sex marriages. And so those marriages, too, are now valid as of today.
My husband and I have been together for 23 years. We've been married now for 5 years. We were married in the state of Connecticut. And this is the first time since returning to the state of my birth that we are actually recognized as a married couple.
Congratulations,
Awesome.
Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
What do you do now, Scott? Are you going to get an Oklahoma marriage license?
There's no need. We've got the marriage license from the day we were married, and that's all we need.
How does it feel for you, though, to know that Oklahoma now recognizes your marriage as any other?
It's an enormous relief, because the amount of money that we've had to spend in the term of our relationship on attorney's fees, first in New York and then here in Oklahoma, it's staggering when I put those numbers together. I would say we've spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 just to protect each other in the event that something happens to one of us. We did all of our legal work in New York, and we were well protected with wills and estates and trusts, and all of that was in place, and we got here only to find that none of that was valid anymore. So what this means now is that we will be treated the same way as any other couple. And the property that I have or that he has, when one of us passes, it will not be the same rigorous process that an inheritance might. So to say that it's a big relief would be an understatement, because it means that that's one less thing to complicate life in our relationship.
How long have you been married? You might have said and I missed it.
We've been together 23 years. We were married 5 years ago, the first year that marriage equality was available in Connecticut.
What do you think the churches and synagogues and faith organizations are going to be saying about today's?
I think we're going to see some churches and synagogues and other faith communities celebrating with us. I think that there will be others that will be standing firm and saying that they won't marry same-gender couples, and that's fine. There is nothing that requires a clergy person to marry anyone. For example, a Southern Baptist minister is not required to perform a marriage ceremony for a Jewish couple, any more than an imam is required to provide a marriage ceremony for a Pentecostal couple. It's the same way. So there are a number of clergy persons in Oklahoma City. We've heard from 3 today who are prepared to begin officiating ceremonies right away. So I think that churches will continue to in many cases, be a bully pulpit, if you will, for those who oppose same-gender marriage. But at this point, that's really nothing more than just letting off steam, because it doesn't mean anything from now on.
And I think that you'll begin to see some conversations within congregations as well. Those are perhaps the more interesting conversations that are going to occur, because until now, those congregations were dealing with hypotheticals as to whether or not their congregation, whether or not their church was going to be a church that accepted and performed marriages regardless of gender. And so, now I think that that's not a hypothetical question anymore, and you'll see some interesting conversations among congregations within congregations. But today's decision, as much as I think that it moves society, is not a mandate on any one church or any one faith group.
And I think that's the way it should be.
Right.
I really do. Ryan mentioned conversations in congregations. Obviously, there are going to be lots of conversations in families beginning today, because this wasn't something that had to be discussed before, and now it is. But that's a good thing, because the more we talk, the more we learn, the more we gain greater understanding from each other. And that eventually will be the real change, the real step forward in equality. I've always said you cannot legislate a change of heart or a change of mind. That's something we do one person at a time. And the way we do that is by demonstrating that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons are every bit as important to the fabric of society as everyone else. We're involved in every aspect of life here in Oklahoma, and now we can do so in a more public way where we are recognized for who we are.
As Oklahomans, I think we're better than the laws that we've passed in the past. Families are stronger when the state unites rather than divides them. And I think that increasingly as neighbors and friends and coworkers and family members come in contact with and get to know and to understand same-sex couples, they will appreciate that they are no different than any other Oklahoma couple.
One thing we haven't talked about is the economic impact for the state of Oklahoma. Given the number of people who have gone outside of the state to be married, they've taken their money with them to do so. In many cases, because same-gender relationships were not recognized here, couples have actually moved to places where they could be. That's going to change now that people can stay in the place that they want to call home. If we look at just in terms of pure dollars, the potential there is enormous for caterers, for wedding planners, and photographers. As a matter of fact, if I was a young person today, I would consider one of two career fields. One would be wedding planning, and the other one would be divorce law.
What can you tell us about the event tonight?
Tonight at 6 o'clock, and we had not planned this because we weren't expecting this, but we started hearing from people at 9:15 this morning saying, we have got to celebrate. So we are expecting hundreds of people to gather outside this evening in a very public, not rally, not demonstration, but pure celebration of not love, but the acceptance of our love for each other.
That's gonna be out here.
Yes. Any other questions?
And I'm off to see my clients get married.
Well, thank you so much for both of you, and thank all of you for attending today.